We will now start to polish the hook. And as usual, I will start with the center of gravity of my character using the torso root controller. Our goal during the polishing stage is to better sell or communicate what we have blocked out before. We need to bring as much impact into the hook as possible and make sure that all our body mechanics are correct. As our character is recovering from the right cross, there is a weight transfer onto the right foot. I need to move the center of gravity of the character toward the right leg. His weight will be supported onto the right foot and he will be able to move the left foot toward the next step. So I've lowered the value of the X location curve until frame 31 as the character is making a step with the left foot, and once the left foot is in contact, I can transfer the weight onto the left foot. Now, working with the Z curve, my goal is to create a nice arc that will go down as the weight shifts toward the left leg, and then the character will raise a bit. When we watch the curve, we can clearly see the weight shifting toward the right foot between frame 28 and 30, and then transitioning onto the left foot until frame 38. While the character is traveling to the left, the value of the X location is raising, is lowering its center of gravity. So the value of the Z curve is going down and stabilize just before this little drop here. This drop in the Z curve over 2 frames is a micro anticipation. For the time being, my character is easing into the anticipation on frame 42. And then from frame 42 to frame 45 is releasing the hook. Using this kind of moving hold from frame 32 to frame 42, we have created a long and slow anticipation into the hook. To break this anticipation and bring even more contrast to the hook, I will insert a keyframe on frame 40, and then I will push the anticipation pose on frame 42, meaning that I will lower the center of gravity, and I will also rework a bit the Y location curve, so that the character is pushing a bit backward. Basically, I'm pushing the curves the opposite direction than during the hook motion. This little extra anticipation over 1 or 2 frames is called a micro anticipation, and it's used a lot in cartoonish animation or game animation. From there, I will be working on the Y location curve of the center of gravity. Here I'm slightly pushing the character back so that the left foot is not supporting too much weight and can be raised and pushed forward into the next step. Once it hits its contact point, I can shift the weight onto this current foot. Then I will ease backward for the moving hold of the anticipation until frame 40, and from frame 40 to 42 I will push the character backward a little faster so that we do create the micro anticipation we were talking about just before. During the hook motion, I will tweak the curves frame by frame. Whenever we have a very fast motion with a lot of changes into the pose of the character, that's pretty common to animate on once, meaning that you will add a keyframe or insert a keyframe every frame, every 1 frame. In this case, I'm just watching the arcs made by the motion path of the center of gravity of my character, and I'm just pushing the different curve so that it creates a nicer arc. I had a pretty squared angle. Here I'm just curving it into a C shape. From there, I will slightly rework the X location curve so that the character transition into the overshoot a little faster between frame 46 and frame 48. Since we had a very detailed blocking of this part of the animation, the polishing stage in this case is really about refining the arcs and the speed of the motion over a couple of frames. I will repeat myself again, but the more detailed is your blocking, the easier and faster will be your splining and polishing stage. As usual, once I'm done with the location curve, I switch to the rotation curves. My goal as usual is to bring contrast to the motion, so generally when you switch to spline, your curve will be smoothed out, which is normal. Your job from there is to favorize whether the previous pose or the next one. Prior to the hook, I will make the body drag. So when the character is going down, I will raise the upper part of the body by pushing the X rotation curve down. And then as he dives into the anticipation for the hook, I will push the curve up. So basically I've created a drag and then a slight overshoot. And I will do the same with the twisting motion. As he goes toward the anticipation, I will make the upper body dragging by pushing the Z quaternion curve down, and then as his weight is shifting upon its left foot and is in full anticipation for the hook, I will push the Z quaternion curve up, and I will do the same with the Y quaternion curve. Again, your job is not to know by heart which curve does what, but what the body should do. In this case, I want to drag while I'm switching stance, and once I've reached the new stance, I want to push the anticipation. So I need to figure out which curve does what by just tweaking them and watching my character. When I move the Z quaternion curve, I can see that the torso of my character is twisting, so I will work on that curve for this specific part of the animation. And since I want to build the micro anticipation as before, between frame 40 and 42, I will slightly raise the Z quaternion curve, which makes the character twisting his body. Then we have this huge drop into the curves that generate the twist the opposite direction to perform the hook. What I will do from there is create a slight overshoot by rotating the Z quaternion curve handle down. This way, the torso will continue rotating a bit just after the character hit the bag. This will bring more weight to the motion. While if we were to rotate the body the opposite way just after the hit, it will make a bounce motion that will be perfect for a light punch or a bouncing ball. Again, since we had a very detailed blocking, pushing those curves is pretty easy and I'm not really modifying their shape, but just choosing whether to push them down or push them up a bit to favorize the previous or next pose. For example, on the X rotation curve here, I'm pushing it down a bit, so I'm favorizing the previous pose, where the character is leaning into the punch, and then, as he will be walking backward, I will push the curve a little up so that the body is dragging forward.